All right, everybody, welcome back. We have a brand new September sneak peek number 2, and we want to go over it, and then I'll get into a little bit of what we see. On first impression, I saw the sneak peek, and I was a little confused just because it's a little bit more convoluted, but we'll kind of break it down and see if we can find a clear way path here. But it does open up a lot of possibilities for what we got going on in this update. So I'm getting a little bit more hype about it. Hype train's starting to roll again. So let's kind of get to it here. It says, "Greetings, agents. This is a CM fragment with Marvel Future Fight. After discussing with Doctor Strange, the Sorcerer Supreme explains he needs a new team to solve his devilish problem. Our agents have found a scientist that specializes in supernatural phenomena. The first stop was his lab, when science meets magic." So is the little tagline here. And then, "It seems like our agents won't be safe under the cover of night anymore. Try to find the clues and see if we can find out which hero will join the new team." So from this description, we don't really get a whole lot. Just the fact that Doctor Strange is assembling a team. Over on Twitter, we get something a little bit more clear cut. It says, "The Marvel Future Fight V64 update introduces a biologist who long sought a cure for his blood ailment, only to find out that himself transformed into a living vampire." So if you don't know by now, it's pretty clear cut after this little sneak peek that it's going to be Morbius that's coming to the game. Morbius, everybody's super jazzed about Sony's catalog of Marvel heroes getting their movies. Jared Leto here is going to embody Morbius, and looks to be very, very true. He looks like a scientist, very, very true to the comic. So super excited about that. Lots of folks are hype about that and this and that update kind of coming together. It is kind of nice to see that Marvel is acknowledging that Sony does have its gallery of rogues heroes coming. So it'll be interesting to see if we do that. Notably missing last time around was Venom, but when Sony released their movie. But Venom and Carnage are also going to be in the new update. So it'll be interesting to see if Marvel Future Fight acknowledges that, if Marvel kind of gives their blessing in order to do that. As a side note, that might be it's not actually the Morbius's first time showing up on film. Though it was never in the theatrical cut, Morbius was technically supposed to be in the Blade setup. There's rumors that there's a deleted scene, I think right at the very end, to set up the sequel. But anyway, that's kind of more of a theatrical tidbit there. Morbius actually made his first comic book appearance in Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man 101, back in, God, the 70s, which is why Sony has the rights to that character, why it's a film character version that Sony has able to do, why these Sony movies aren't being made by Marvel Studios. They're only somewhat connected to the MCU. But that's a video for another time. Anyway, back to Morbius himself. He originally started out as a villain. He is ultimately more of a anti-hero, kind of a brooding scientist that wants to do good. His appearance back in 1971 was Amazing Spider-Man 101. He was actually born. This sort of happens after the ban on vampires. The self-regulating censorship board that the comic book industry had at the time had banned on supernaturals and vampires. But once that was lifted, it's part of the time period where Dracula shows up in a lot of comic books. Other characters that have vampire abilities show up in that run stretch of comics there, which is the reason we kind of Morbius becomes a pretty big figure, because he picks up his own series, shows up in other titles, which is what we're going to get into this video as we get there. In the comics, he's a well-renowned biochemist. He's working with blood to kind of figure out his own blood ailment, his own blood disease. It's a biochemical experiment that goes wrong. He is infatuated with Dracula and loves bats at the same time. So he's trying to solve his rare blood disease. And although he isn't cured necessarily, well, he technically doesn't have the problem anymore. So he's technically cured. he basically ends up with some strengths and weaknesses similar to that of a vampire. He's increased strength. He has a healing factor. He does have an aversion to sunlight, but he can be active during the day. And of course, he's searching for blood to sustain his own life. He is inspired by the story of Dracula. The creator, Roy Thomas, I believe, wanted to create a villain for Stan Lee after this ban was lifted. So that's somewhat relevant to what we've got kind of going on. So what that means for Marvel Future Fight as a whole is we're going to start to introduce obviously Morbius, but can we look at the power set of, obviously he's going to have superhuman strength, superhuman speed, heightened senses. The character himself also has like night vision, echolocation, a lot of stuff that's similar to Bats. His healing factor isn't as strong as Wolverine or say Deadpool's, but he might have some. He does sort of lifesteal to kind of heal himself. So it would be interesting to see if we see that. It'd be also interesting to see if we'll see maybe a hypnotize ability, simply because Morbius does have that ability in the game, or in the comics. He is able to control individuals and kind of go from there. I know that a lot of folks are super excited with this announcing of Morbius that we might get a rework for Blade. So the two of them are rivals. Blade is already in the game. He's the Daywalker. He's a living vampire killer, essentially. But then we also have Morbius, who actually is a vampire. So I think with this sneak peek, we are going to get closer to that. I don't want to... not ready to kind of flat out and say that we are getting a rework for Blade. But this second sneak peek does revolve somewhat around him. It's the second one that we've kind of done. The first sneak peek had I talked about Damnation, about Wong assembling the team of the Midnight Suns. So we will kind of get into that a little bit more. Also in this sneak peek, we have an Awakening Crystal. I don't necessarily want to say that Morbius deserves a Day 1 Awakening. He's not that strong in game, but it could go to the likes of Blade or something like that. So we'll kind of look at the cast of characters as a whole. But for now, we'll take a look at the sneak peek and we'll see, kind of review it as a whole, because it is a somewhat puzzling. So here in the dialogue of the sneak peek here, we have this second line where the Sorcerer Supreme says he needs a new team. I'm pretty sure that new team is referring to the Midnight Suns, so we definitely want to talk about that. To solve his devilish problem, that's probably going to be a reference, I would assume, to Mephisto. There's a lot of demon-like or devil characters. Mephisto isn't necessarily the devil per se, but he is the Lord of Hell. In most times we see him as the Lord of Hell. There's other people that assume the throne. We talked about that, but we'll kind of go from there. Our agents have found that the scientists specialize in supernatural phenomena, and the first stop was his lab. So I think what we're seeing in the clip, this little shadowy figure right here, is probably referencing one of the Future Fight agents. And they're visiting Morbius's lab, but you know, this could be Blade. We'll kind of have to see. Let me show you the clip, and then we'll kind of go from there. So there's a lot of pieces I want to kind of break down out of this. Obviously, we have the Awakening Crystal that's right over here. It's clear and present, so somebody is already studying this, or maybe has looked at this. So that's first and foremost interesting. Is it sort of Morbius that is researching it, or is it the agent that's searching it, or is it somebody comes to claim the Awakening Crystal? Is it just somewhat related? As we're kind of furthering on in this clip itself, I slowed the speed down pretty drastically just so I can kind of look at this. So along with the Awakening Crystal, we have this guy that's standing in front of the Awakening Crystal. This, like I said, was probably the agent. As we go further along in the sneak peek, we get a couple of things that happen. So there's this clip of obviously from the perspective of the agent here, and then it goes red before we actually see the soundbite. So it's a question of who is this agent is. Does that agent have some abilities? Very, very interesting, right? But we'll kind of see what we've got going on. The last couple of months of our updates have focused on not just one comic book run, right? The last time around, we're out here to kind of sell comics, right? So last time it was Inhumans versus X-Men. Before that, we got the Immortal Hulk, which had a bunch of other Hulks kind of getting updates. So with all of these characters, we're starting to see some threads. They have a couple of things in common, and that would be, I mentioned it previously, it's the Midnight Suns. In the last sneak peek, we talked about Wong assembling the Midnight Suns in order to help Doctor Strange take down Mephisto in the comic book Damnation. So you got Wong here. We also have Sid Blade, Elsa Bloodstone, Dr. Voodoo, Iron Fist, Mr. Knight, which would be Moon Knight, Ghost Rider, and Man-Thing. Also from here, we're also kind of missing Dr. Voodoo's up here. But yeah, the other comic book history, the Midnight Suns are a group of anti-heroes thought against the mystical occurrences, demons, other supernaturals. There's a laundry list of folks to kind of pull from. We've got a couple of people, the Spirits of Vengeance, which included other Ghost Riders. We had Darkhold Redeemers, we had Hellstorm, Black Hat, Hannibal King, Punisher played a very, very heavy role in it. And that's kind of who we're seeing in a couple of these other shots that we have along the way. This is actually Hannibal King over here. It's not his abilities are somewhat similar to the Daywalker. If you actually watched Blade's trilogy, Hannibal King is played by Ryan Reynolds, so he actually has appeared on the screen before. He's typically a guy that's hunting vampires just the same, but he's entirely all human. Maybe he has some ability, but just carries a big gun. It's kind of cool. But the modern day set of Midnight Suns is kind of where I think we're gonna be pulling for in this update. I'm still hoping for a gallery of reworks. There's so many characters in the game that we already have that we need to rework. I know that Punisher got a costume before, but even his base kit, if we could touch that, would be great. But I'm more highlighting and hoping for Blade and Moon Knight. Blade and Moon Knight, and potentially Elsa Bloodstone. Those characters have completely fallen off the wayside. It'd be cool if they introduced Man-Thing. We already have Dr. Voodoo. He's very, very good. I would love them for the touch Wong. It's not that... He's really, really intelligent, but not that powerful in the comics. But yeah, Mr. Knight, Ghost Rider, Blade, and Elsa Bloodstone would be my preferred characters that end up getting it. So it's really kind of... We're probably going to get multiple tier 3s. We're probably going to get multiple awakening characters. So it ends up being who is the case for what. I think Ghost Rider is argument enough to pick up the tier 3 this time around. Awakening wise, I think Blade is an interesting person that we can put in the role of awakening heroes. Moon Knight, I would love to see. I think that would be great. It's a great way to rework him at the same time as giving him a cool uniform that a lot of people want. Elsa Bloodstone is a lesser side character, which is a little bit more snarky. There's been a lot of rumors about the Midnight Suns coming to the MCU with Morbius along the way, but a lot of the Moon Knight has his own TV show coming. Blade obviously has his own movie coming. And all of these characters are back in the Marvel, or in essentially Disney's house and Marvel Studios. So it'll be interesting. I'm going to actually link a lot of the video that's premiered last year around Halloween. That does a really great job highlighting the potential for a Midnight Suns new team, whether in the comics or in the movies themselves. But I'm kind of gonna end up the video right here, where I think we're a little bit early for a Halloween update, but man, it's very, very supernatural, occult. I love this kind of realm of the Marvel universe, Marvel Knights, Midnight Suns, all that, the darker stuff, because that's always much more interesting to me. So let me know in the comments. Let me know what you think. Who's getting that illustrious T3 skill, and who's getting that awakening? Who else would you like to see as a new character? I'd like to see what everybody else is thinking. I think we could have a lot of fun with this update. So let me know. Until then, until next time, be good, do good, be well, stay safe, and I'll see you guys soon.